right. So to finalize this drawing, one thing I should have done was put the labels as far as front, top, right, etc. In place, but I did not. Okay. So there's another layer that, and I think this would be the last one. This yes or no layer is something I made for something else, but you have also what we call a center line layer. Okay, and this goes back to the first video when I said you have to make sure. Now that we're dealing, we had to draw these circles. You also have to make sure again that you do have your center and your quadrant on in order to make this happen. So center lines, this is the X marks the spot thing. Like if I were to go and lay out a board where I needed a hole in it, and this is what is going to help us do that. So the methodology here that I always typically use is I grab a circle, and the nice thing about this is it doesn't have to be an exact size. It could be an exact size, but I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to make this diameter of this circle about like so. Okay. Just somewhere in there. We don't want it way out here where it's crowding this one. We don't want it tiny. We just want it about like so. So maybe 2/3 the size. Okay. What I'm going to do is go grab a line, and I'm going to come down here from that point to that point. And I'm going to come down here from this 9 o'clock quadrant to the 3 o'clock quadrant. This is giving me that X marks the spot. And when I erase that circle, I have a series of center lines, right? And this is good. The other thing is when we dimension, we never dimension to the edge of a circle, okay? So very straightforward. Just to see it once again, turn your center line layer on, draw a circle. If it doesn't grab, if you have a center point already established, if it's not instantly grabbing that point, just move your mouse away from the object and then slowly come back in, and then you'll see the center mark light up, and just do about like so. And then you're going to just draw a line, like I said, from the 12 o'clock to the 6 o'clock quadrant. You're going to do another line from the 9 o'clock to the 3 o'clock quadrant. And when that's done, you're going to erase. So let's do some dimensioning. Go back over to my dimension layer. This is a really nice drawing from the standpoint that the way that I've laid it out, I can really kind of minimize the amount of dimensions I'm putting over this, okay? So up to the right of dimension, this is usually what this looks like. So you have your dimension, and then you have another thing that says linear. And when I hit the drop down on linear, I have all kinds of options. The only time I've ever used arc length, I built a boat when I was in college, and if you do that, it's the only time I've ever had to do it. It shows me that the distance, if I was to hold like a seamstress's tape measure around that arc, was 9.42. Never had a reason to use that other than that. I guess maybe in landscaping that could be helpful if you're trying to figure out linear footage of like a border wall or something. But when I hit drop down, I have lots of different things. Angular is something we'll use quite often, and I'll just go over to something that has an angle, like Multiview 2 is a good example of that, or Multiview 1. If I use angular, it will, if I click right here and click right here, it can show me the angle, and I can do it like as an inside or an outside, so like a complementary or a supplementary, or however I wanted to view that. So it's just literally click the two lines that form the angle. One other one, so when I do dimension linear, let's say I wanted to know this distance right here. Well, you can see linear keeps it locked into like an XY format, but angular, I'm sorry, not angular, but aligned would tell me that distance between there and there, and you can see it pulls it parallel to that line. And this is the thing I never really, sometimes you do put a dimension on it when you're all said and done, but usually you don't, you just rely on people to use straight lines to figure out angular lengths and things. So, so going back here, so I've showed you a couple that you don't need, but here are the ones that you will need. Radius and diameter. Whenever we're using a circle, we're going to use a diameter. When we're using a curve or a portion of a circle, we're going to use a radius. So if I click diameter, this is super easy to use. It just says select arc or circle. So I'm going to select this, and you can see I can just drag away, and it kind of the dimension follows me wherever. I never put them up this way. To me, that's confusing. It's easy to get that confused with like a linear dimension. So typically you want to just kind of pull it over here at an angle and out of the way. All right. And this, for radius, it works exactly the same way. So I click radius, and I'm not going to put it here, right? If I did that, it looks a little bit goofy, which one is which. So I want to make a distinction. So in this case, I'm going to make my radius come up like there. All right. And that looks real nice. All right. So we'll go ahead and do a couple of dimensions. And now I can just use linear for the rest of it. I don't want to go ahead and do this. This is something I see all the time where people will say like, okay, so that's 3, and then this is right here, this is 2, and then this is 2, right? Okay, and this is 2, right? And this is 6. If this were a machinist who was making this part, they would literally walk to the drafting and design office and say, "Are you kidding me? This is absurd. It's too much. It's convoluted. It's just way too much to see." And again, just like an English teacher, history teacher, when you're writing a paper, would they always say? What less is more, right? Don't use 4 sentences to describe what 3 sentences can do. Okay. It might be handy to know the overall. So we do need to know the width of the object. We need to know its width across the front, which is 3. That one's a piece of cake. We need to know the height of the object. And if you look, dimension keeps running. Sometimes I right click it and forget that it's still running. Okay. But see, I can still dimension away. And here's the thing I said before, on the last drawing, I said, if you just dimension from this point to this point, this middle 2, as long as everything is symmetrical, like we have 6 minus 2 here, if that 2 is split evenly on the top and bottom, then we don't have to put that 2. But I would rather see this dimension actually over on this side, because you see how this is pulling it. It's like using, these are called extension lines. It's pulling it way out to fit the 2 in there, where I don't have to pull it way out on this side. Okay. So I got an overall height of 6. I got a middle of 2. That tells me a good bit, and a width of 3. So again, I don't need to measure this or tell it it's a width of 3 right here. All right. I do need to know where the center of this hole is, which we already decided was 6. Now there is one thing I can do. I can put a center line, and I don't typically do this. We used to have to do this when I was learning like board drafting. We used to put a center line in there. I don't do it. I think it's too confusing. I think it can be, if you forget to change the line type, you might not know what that is. So in this case, I would use a dimension like so. I would come over from here, and I would just dimension over to here, and I would pull that up, and now I can very easily see that all of this geometry is relative to pulling this over 6 inches from the end. Okay. And that's why those center lines are helpful, because I had something to snap to. Aside from that, what else needs to be addressed? We need to know how far in this little notch goes. So easily enough, we can just go ahead and mark from there to there. And it tells me that that's 3, right? So this distance, the distance between here and here, that 3-inch distance is the distance between here and here. And I've already given all the information out this way, so I really don't need to give any other information at all. If I wanted to be helpful, maybe somebody was wondering what is the length of the thing overall, so they don't have to do math to say, this would be handy. So the person who's going to make this part, rather than having to say, okay, so I've got a distance of 6 to the center plus a radius of 3, means 6 plus 3 is 9. Just go ahead and tell them right here that the distance is 9. Okay, and so again, I'll put a box around this. I'll put that on my construction layer. You can see my alignment is perfect, right? Top is directly above front. Left is directly to the left of front. The only thing I've not done is stick my labels in place, but I did in my other class. So again, if your drawing looks like my drawing with letters in all caps, dimensions on the dimension layer, center lines on the center line layer, hidden lines on the hidden line layer, nice and neat, not too many dimensions. This whole thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, but we don't even need this 9. So with 6 measurements, I could really build this entire thing. All right, so give it a whirl.